In a quiet Igbo village, the Okeke family lived happily. Mr. Okeke was a school teacher, and his wife, Mrs. Okeke, ran a small shop. Their only son, Chijioke, was a playful and curious 8-year-old boy. They were a Christian family, but they also respected their Igbo traditions. One day, Mr. and Mrs. Okeke had to travel to another town for a family emergency. They needed someone to take care of Chijioke, so they asked their neighbor Nieka to watch over him. Nieka was an old woman, known for her wisdom and deep knowledge of Igbo traditions. She had no children of her own, but many people in the village respected her. Mr. and Mrs. Okeke trusted Nneka and believed their son would be safe with her. But strange things started happening while they were away. Things that would change their lives forever. At first, everything seemed fine. Nneka treated Chijioke well, giving him food and telling him stories. But after a few days, Chijioke started behaving strangely. He became quiet and looked lost in thought. He stopped playing outside and instead sat alone, staring at nothing. At night, he had dreams about people he had never met. Old men and women dressed in traditional Igbo clothes. They whispered to him in a language he didn't fully understand. One night, Chijioke woke up screaming, "Mama! Papa! They are calling me!" Nneka sat beside him and held his hand. "Do not be afraid, my child. They are your ancestors. They are trying to show you something." Chijioke didn't understand what she meant, but he trusted her. Mrs. Okeke could not stop worrying about her son. She decided to return home earlier than planned. When she arrived, she saw Chijioke standing outside Nneka's house. Something was wrong. He was different. His eyes looked distant, and he didn't smile when he saw her. "My son, what is wrong?" she asked, hugging him. Chijioke whispered, "Mama, they are calling me. The ancestor, they want me to come with them." Mrs. Okeke's heart pounded. What was happening to her son? She turned to Nneka. "What have you done to my child?" she demanded. Nneka sighed. "Your son is special," she said. "He has a gift. The ancestors have chosen him to carry their wisdom. I have been preparing him." Mrs. Okeke was shocked. "Preparing him for what?" Nneka looked at her calmly. "For his destiny. If he accepts, he will gain great wisdom. If he refuses, the spirits may take him away." That night, Mrs. Okeke searched Nneka's house while she was asleep. She found strange objects, ritual bowls, sacred beads, and marks on the ground. It was clear that a spiritual ritual was taking place. Panicked, she ran back home and told Mr. Okeke everything. He was furious. "We must take Chijioke away from that woman immediately," he said. But Mrs. Okeke was torn. She did not believe in dark magic, but she also knew that Igbo traditions were powerful. If what Nneka said was true, rejecting the spirits might put their son in danger. That night, Chijioke had another dream. The ancestors stood in a circle calling his name. They reached out their hands. "Come with us, Chijioke. We will give you great power." Chijioke felt himself floating toward them. But then he heard his mother's voice calling him back. He opened his eyes and saw his parents standing beside him, their faces filled with worry. The next day, Nneka told them, "You must decide. Let Chijioke complete the ritual or take him away and risk angering the spirits." Mr. Okeke was firm. "We will not let anything happen to our son. We are taking him home." Mrs. Okeke held Chijioke's hand tightly. "My son will not be taken away by spirits. He belongs with his family." Nneka looked at Chijioke. "The choice is also his." Chijioke was afraid. He looked at his parents, then at Nneka. Finally, he took a deep breath and stepped back toward his mother. "I want to stay with my family. Nick sighed but did not argue. Then go. But remember, the ancestors do not forget their chosen ones. As the Okekes left, Chijioke felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was safe. But deep inside, he knew that a part of him would always be connected to the ancestors. Chijioke returned to his normal life, but he was never the same again. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, he would hear whispers in the wind, soft voices calling his name. And though he never answered, he always listened.